welcome everybody. It's probably the last before vacation case policy research seminar, but nobody should never tell you for sure, because sometimes we have some unexpected opportunities, some unexpected guests. So I cannot say for sure that it's last seminar from this service before vacation. The topic is about fiscal crisis in what World Bank is calling Europe and Central Asia region. So in transition economy, Central Eastern Europe, former Soviet Union, including Balkans, including Turkey. Yeah? So this is the topic of today's seminar. We have a pleasure to host Luca Barbone, our old friend, who we cooperate, I think, from early 1990s. At some point, I don't remember exactly the timing, but Luca was lead economist for Central Europe. Then he worked in Africa region. Then he was country director for Ukraine, Belarus, and Moldova. Then he worked in PREM, and now works in PREM of Europe and Central Asia region. Yeah, if I correctly follow all changes within the World Bank structure. Luca presentation will be commented by Maciek Krzak, who is case associate and is best known as the editor and coordinator of the Polish Economic Outlook, but this time it's not about Outlook, which was published quite recently and will be available on our website, but the topic is broader about the entire region. So I will not take more time, and I would like to pass floor to Luca.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Marek, for your introduction, and good afternoon to you, and thank you very much for coming to this presentation. Marek, by the way, for those of you who are not familiar with acronyms, he said PREM, which in Hindi means love. So I've always been very enthusiastic about being in charge of love in Europe and Central Asia. But unfortunately, we don't use Hindi as a working language. It actually means poverty reduction and economic management, which is much less, I would say, fancy.
More technocratic.
Much more technocratic. Okay, so what I wanted to do this afternoon. Well, first of all, let me give you a little bit of background. I had actually agreed with Marek to have a presentation a few months ago, which would have been on a publication that the World Bank had just issued about the social and economic consequences of the crisis. Unfortunately, as I was preparing to come here for the presentation, the largest snowstorm ever to hit the United States hit, and they closed the airport, so I couldn't come here. And then I tried to reschedule this event several times, but at that point the Icelandic volcano began to affect. So when I agreed finally to come here, I was really very apprehensive that some other thing might happen. And then I started reading about the flooding, and I said, well, that might be it. Luckily, we managed to be here. I have since changed the topic of my presentation.
We are on higher.
Maybe the visual will not make it clear. But I have changed the presentation of the topic, not so much because the socio-economic consequences of the crisis are not important, but first of all, we know a lot more about those consequences than we knew earlier. But secondly, in the meanwhile, we have begun a process of stock taking about the fiscal consequences of the crisis, and what we have learned about the behavior public expenditure systems across the region, and then what this says for the future. Now this is a very topical issue, because clearly, although the crisis, the economic crisis, did not start as a fiscal crisis, as had been the case in other opportunities, certainly the amplitude of the economic changes during the crisis turned itself into a fiscal crisis, which affected different groups of countries in very different ways. And as I will argue in a few minutes, really brought to the fore some unfinished agendas in a way that was much more pronounced than before the crisis. But let me get into here. And as I said, this is a ongoing work, and actually we are very happy to have the opportunity to present it to audiences as we develop it, because we very much appreciate feedback on whether we are getting ideas that are correct or not. I wanted to put something as a way of indicating, and this is a quote from James Carville, the former advisor to President Clinton, who said that if I were reborn, I would like to be reincarnated as the bond market. Now, he was joking, but essentially he was actually indicating the fact that bond markets have become so powerful that the policy choices. He was talking about the United States, of course, but the policy choices have really shrunk in many countries. And I think what has happened just recently, in the past several weeks, a couple of months, with the onset of the Greek crisis, is really a reminder of the fact that in this world of interconnected markets, capital markets, the space for independent or reckless fiscal policies is becoming more and more reduced. Anyway, let me just give you the main points, and then I will try to illustrate them in sequence. Now, this approach generalization, as I said, we just happen to have a region that's very diverse. We have very poor places like Tajikistan or Kyrgyzstan, and we have very advanced economies in Poland or Turkey. We have oil producers. So it's the generalizations are difficult, but I think that it's fair to say that before the crisis, it was a good time for public finances across the area. It was also a very good time generally. The region saw, I think, one of the longest bouts of positive growth, and in some cases extremely positive growth, which of course had if you like, good consequences on the status of public finances. Now, what happened is, again, this is a generalization, but during the first half of the decade, there was quite a bit of fiscal consolidation, and countries that were coming out of the 1998 recession, and they had been in a very precarious fiscal position, managed to achieve quite a bit of fiscal consolidation, essentially through very buoyant increases in incomes, in revenues. If you look at the second part of the decade, just 3 or 4 years before the onset of the crisis in late '98, you started to see that the temptation, and this is where I think the political economy of public expenditure control becomes very interesting, because the temptation across the board, almost across the board, the temptation to use increasing public revenues to increase spending, increase programs,